jobs of a potter. I make pots, I make flower pots, I make chimneys, I make tiles, I make ridge tiles, and bricks as well. Unfortunately, part of the thing is you kind of get multi-skilled in your life if you work in this industry. So what I'm making today is a brick, which is quite an unusual brick, and it's from it's a gatehouse for an abbey built in the 1300s. So this is very similar to a Roman brick. We once made some bricks for the Mithras Temple in London. So this is very similar to Roman brick. Roman bricks were maybe usually a bit longer than this, but of a very similar thickness and width as these. The reason why the Romans made such huge bricks, well, they were made by slaves. So it didn't matter how heavy they were, or the sort of the amount of labour that went into them. So one can assume that the abbey probably used local labour, and the fact is it's in Alsby, which is about 6 miles away from here. So it would have been a very, very similar clay to what we have today on the bottom bed. So if you notice, our normal clays are a grey-brown, whereas this is a black. So there's a lot of organic matter in this. This is about 3 meters down in the beds of clay. So the first bed is what we use for tiles, and then you go into black clay. Below that is gravel and the occasional peat area, and then you'll also get tree, whole trees sometimes you'll find. So this is a very, very, there's probably about 60% silt in this clay. You couldn't actually make a flower pot of it. It would be hard to make a tile, but it's excellent for bricks because it doesn't really have much, doesn't hold its shape, as it were. So you get your clot, and basically I'm making a and you throw it into your mould. I don't really have a decent mould because there's only 20 of these to do, so we won't spend the money on making a proper mould. And one of the reasons why we're doing them by hand and with this clay is they want to be as rough as possible, so they fit in with the bricks that are already on site. So they look fairly uniform now, and this is what you call a wet sand method of making. So this gives you a very coarse looking brick. This will give you a brick that looks very old. So if I just pour some water on that, the sand comes away from the brick, from the actual clay, and it gives it a much, much coarser look. So you can see that, you can see the creases starting to appear on the brick. Sorry, it's not wasted. So thankfully I don't have many of these to do. I think there's only about 20 or so for this job. So you get your mould, which has got to be damp. You put your sand in. And you want lumps of sand. So you're making indents into the clay. Cut your clot. Get a good generous amount of sand on it. And you strike off your excess.